So with further ado, we'll get going. Our first presentation is titled mRNA Vaccines, Facts and Myths, and Dr. Mike Roof of Iowa State University. Dr. Roof has over 25 years of experience in the animal health industry with BI, and today is currently the Chief Technology Officer at Iowa State University. So the floor is yours, Dr. Roof.
Thanks, Matt. Well, first of all, thanks for allowing me to speak today to Monty and the organizing committee. This is an unusual topic for me, to be honest, and all the topic, it's in the influenza section, and the topic is mRNA vaccines. But I'd just like to tell the audience in advance that the topic is really about ensuring that our veterinarians and animal health community have the tools needed to treat animals and some of the ramifications that are associated with legislating vaccine use. In today's world, that happens to be messenger RNA, but it could be any technology in the future. So, we are probably the most sophisticated animal health company in the world, and we have many, many tools available. And despite that, we still have tremendous challenges. New and emerging diseases, some of our current vaccines are approved but aren't perfect. Labor becomes a growing issue, and so different ways to apply vaccines are important. And then we all work in this area of One Health, and so not only are we worried about animals, but worried about human health and the environment. So it's a complex world that we live in, and we need every tool available. This is an example. This is I think his name's Dr. Malone. Don't know him, never met him. But this is the type of information that you can find on the internet. If you read at the bottom, he's sending off warning flags and flares that our food supply could be harmed because of the use of messenger RNA vaccines. This is from a very prestigious journal of Free Press or something, so it must be true. But anyway, you can imagine my mom or some layperson reads this and you have a doctor in front of your name, it must be true. And so, what happens? Stimulus response. And so, unfortunately, there are states that have decided to engage in legislative activity that would address or limit the use of vaccines in animal health. Those states are listed above. There may be more. This is the last time I searched. These were the four. My personal knowledge, again, I'm not an expert in legislative policy on vaccines, but I've got sucked into this a little bit, and most of my work has been through Missouri. And so basically what they have discussed or tried to do is define gene therapy, and then anything they deem as involving gene therapy, they're suggesting that product have a special label on a grocery store shelf. Idaho has gone a step further and said that if you actually use a gene therapy product in animals, it's a misdemeanor. To my knowledge, Idaho is the only state that's actually passed legislation. Others have put it forward and voted and it hasn't passed, but that doesn't mean it's not going away. I did go down the rabbit hole a little bit to see if I could find out, what's the general basis for the concern. I would say in general, it's two different buckets. There is a perception that in some cases, RNA vaccines would be required to be used in animals. Most of the trails I followed from this had to do with cattle and some belief that COVID vaccines may be required to vaccinate cattle. You really couldn't trace anything to a solid, reputable source, but that's sort of the trend of it. And then the other trend was sort of the frankenfood concerns that if you used an mRNA vaccine or some recombinant product, your food would be adulterated, and as you ate it, you could pick those genes up. Well, I think it's always good to step back and maybe review the facts, and at the end, I'll show you some references of some other folks that probably are more qualified than I am to discuss this. But talk a little bit about the biological properties of messenger RNA and RNA specifically. Talk a little bit about the existing regulation of vaccines and how, in reality, safety is already addressed, both for humans and animals. Quickly review what is on the market today that might be covered under this gene therapy topic. Challenges to our industry if these legislative processes would continue, and then talk about a little bit about the importance of what we could and should do to help the situation. So first of all, if you wear a lab coat and you happen to work with RNA, you work with one of the most difficult things in the lab that we work with. It's very label. All RNA is labeled. All RNA is degradable. And so if you work with it, you generally have to use baked glassware, RNase inhibited compounds. Everything has to be done at refrigerated or frozen. Gloves, lab coats, the whole deal. I mean, it's just simply not easy. It's very difficult to work with. And in fact, there's graphs on the bottom, and it varies by source, but the half-life of RNA is generally seconds to minutes. You can find a few publications that talk about hours, but it degrades, it has a half-life. And from an evolutionary point of view, that makes perfect sense, because if it didn't degrade, those cells would just keep making protein indefinitely to the point of toxicity or where it didn't add value. So anybody that wants to tell you that the presence of RNA is some sort of monstrous thing that stays with you forever doesn't really know what RNA is and how it's degraded. So biologically, it's literally seconds and minutes for the most part. As I said to begin with, we probably really don't need legislative efforts to talk about vaccines, because there's already agencies designed to evaluate, assess, and test that. The FDA does it for animal health on the therapeutic side. The CVB does it on the vaccine side. Those include veterinarians, those include microbiologists, they include virologists, they include people who understand the industry and are competent in the assessment of this technology. The CVB review is, on the vaccine side, is all-encompassing. It ranges from the standard kill and fill all the way down to nucleic acid-mediated vaccines. So one thing I did want to point out, because some people may not be aware of it, specifically if you work with a GMO, and messenger RNA would be one, but it could be any GMO, there is a document and a process called the Summary Information Format, SIF for short. And within that document, not only does it cover host animal safety and efficacy, but it also covers non-target species. It could be mice, hamsters, rabbits, or it could be other associated food animals that might be on a farm. It covers public health, including food. It covers the environment. It covers contingencies in case something goes wrong. If there's exposure, what are the scenarios that you would investigate. And then there's a general risk assessment. In addition, any GMO-based product has to go through the Federal Register. So the Federal Register is a document that's published, and there's a 30 to 90-day period of time that the public is allowed to comment. And so if you have concerns, that's the way for the public to engage. So if you read some of the trade journals or lay journals on this topic, they will report different things. Some will report that mRNA vaccines are used in animals today. Others will say they're not. When I went to the CVB website and reviewed the license establishments and the licenses, I was able to find that Huvepharma has a DNA vaccine licensed. In talking to some of the folks there, I don't believe that's actually sold. I think it was technically feasible, but maybe wasn't commercially viable, or for whatever reason, but not sold. On the messenger RNA side, relative to vaccines like COVID that are RNA that's synthesized and then stabilized, in my opinion, there are no products on the market today like that. It doesn't mean they might not be coming, but they're not licensed today. There is something the CVB has characterized as an RNA particle. I don't know where that term came from or why that term was used, but that product is basically something sold by Merck, branded as Sequibity. And what, in that particular case, what that product is an equine encephalitis virus that's defective, and so that it can infect, it can deliver its RNA payload and an associated gene, but the virus is not able to form a new infectious particle. Whether you consider that an RNA vaccine or not, open for interpretation, but it's really a virus. It's grown as a virus. It's harvested and stored frozen, lyophilized a virus. It infects, but it can't replicate and repackage. It is also interesting or important to note that while some people want to legislate that concept, any pig that has PRRS has RNA injected into it every day. So, and we eat that, and nobody's turned into Frankenstein yet. So, that's just part of the process. And I'd also say RNA vaccines and the idea and the technology, it's been around for a long time, probably 20 plus years. And so it's nothing new. It's new to many of us because of COVID, and it became mainstream. But I think it's safe to say, and I don't know this is a statement I'm largely making as an opinion, but I would tend to believe that every major vaccine company has investigated or some efforts in either an RNA or a DNA vaccine of some sort, just as a basis for their R&D platforms. So, in my opinion, the health and maintenance, welfare of our animals is best done by veterinarians. They're people that are trained, who understand the individual farms, the individual situation, and I don't think that's a topic that probably is adequately covered by legislation. And really, I think between what the CVB does and FDA in terms of assessing safety before tools become available is appropriate, and I think DVMs and veterinarians are really the best source of information and decision of if and when these products should be used. Having said that, in the world we live in today, this legislative effort continues and is moving on. And so I think we therefore all have a role to help educate and influence this. Certainly, Randy Spronk and Pork Board and Cattlemen's Association could and should stay engaged and inform and educate. I think pork producers themselves, it's not to your benefit to have product that has strange labels on it. And so I think you could and should stay engaged. And then everybody in the academic field or the government, whether it's NADC or the University of Minnesota or whoever, providing factual-based information to try to influence and educate, I think becomes important for all of us. So as I started out, I think this topic of legislating messenger RNA vaccines is a current and surface problem, but I think the topic is above and beyond that. As I said at the beginning, we need to have every tool available to serve our industry, and new tools could and should and will become available in the future. And I don't think legislative processes probably serve us well. We should rely on the FDA and the CVB to do that. If we do lose control of this, some of the things that could happen would be labeling requirements that would be confusing to the public. Certainly, the lay person that says gene therapy in big red letters on a package may or may not know what that means and could drive consumer preferences. State-by-state regulations like we're facing now certainly could lead to compliance problems. People that are raising pigs in North Carolina and then moving to the Midwest and crossing state borders could be challenged. Vaccine companies, veterinarians, et cetera. Complexity of, if you work in the vaccine industry, trying to get Europe happy, EMEA happy, China, JMAF, USDA is hard enough. If you have to make 50 states happy as well, you could discourage investment in new innovation being developed as well if this trend would continue. And then finally, and this would be the worst case scenario, but if, again, this becomes a political issue, it could impact import, export, and trade. So again, we remain and are the most advanced country in the world in terms of animal health, and we should stay that way. I believe we should use our technology responsibly, rely upon our existing agencies, whether it's CVB, FDA, and our scientific experts, to help guide our industry, and really with the veterinarian as the tip of the spear in how those things are applied. And we need to ensure that these things become available. And I don't think the legislative process is probably the best way. So just as some references, in additional, if you want to read up on more of this, or if you want to provide something in writing to colleagues who may want to discuss or gain clarity. On the top left is an article written by David Verhoeven at Iowa State and published as in the conversation as an opinion commentary on the benefits of new technology in animal health, and he indirectly also discusses some of the myths about messenger RNA. And then Dr. Folta out of Florida has also been very active in terms of publishing summaries and debunking myths and concerns of messenger RNA. In addition to the technical side, as an example on the right, the National Institute of Animal Ag has created a consortium of interested stakeholders and also provided webinars on the topic, as well as Q&A. They've also provided a one-page overview, kind of quick sheet, as well as a 5 or 6 page document that sort of provides details of different things. And so these are references that could be used by anyone with concerns. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions or comments of better ways to proceed.
Thanks, Mike. We have some time for questions. We've got microphones kind of to the side here. We got one right here.
Annie DeGrood from Epivax. Thank you for the nice talk and the great points. I thought there was an mRNA alpha replicon vaccine for Venezuelan equine encephalitis virus.
Yeah, that's the sequivity product that I mentioned from Merck.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's an alpha replicon. It's a self-amplifying mRNA vaccine, as far as I know.
Yeah, so CVB formally, and if there's some folks from Merck that are here that want to comment, they're certainly closer. I don't work for Merck, but when CVB participated in these conversations and calls, they classified it as an RNA particle, is the terminology they used. But it's a equine encephalitis backbone that is self-amplifying but non-replicating. So you're right.
Do we have any other questions out there? I've got one for you, Mike. Okay. So say we get one of these products someday that's here and is very effective. Of all those things you listed, what do you feel is going to be potentially the biggest barrier? Like, where should the bulk of the preparation be put today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would have never guessed we would be where we are today. And really COVID sort of politicized the use of vaccines beyond what I would have ever guessed. And so I think we're just going to have to be diligent. Hopefully this is a fad and we can get back to science and medicine and not the political part. So I don't have a great solution, but I think it's something. When this first happened, I laughed at, it's internet squabble. But when people start successfully passing things that make it illegal, it's a problem. I will say that I didn't seek them out, but I was contacted by 5 different individuals who were involved in various legislative activity, and 2 of the 5 were seeking to learn. Oh, I didn't know. Oh, that's different than I was told, which was great, and then they could go continue to learn. The other 3 were really calling just to validate their position. And so it just shows it. I'm a scientist, so I want to talk about data, I want to talk about facts, and some of these things are different. They're emotional. They're hard to pin. I've heard, well, that's fine. I've heard, you're going to force me to. And so those are hard to hard to address, but I think it's also important not to ignore.
Great. Any other last questions? We'd have a few minutes.
Hi, Dr. Do you think that compared to other forms of vaccines, the production cost for mRNA vaccine will be comparable, or does it have an advantage? Because for human vaccine, obviously it's of a high price.
Mm-hmm.
But for like animal vaccine, do you think it will have a comparable advantage?
Yep, great question. The question is really, is it economically practical to produce an RNA vaccine? Like I said, the technology itself has been around for a long time. And the barriers to animal health have traditionally been cost, patents, and most companies have invested in what I would call a traditional manufacturing site. And so some of this RNA technology requires something different. I do think because COVID was largely subsidized by governments all over the world, the technology and the cost of that has come down, and we will see it. My prediction is that you will see it first in dogs, companion animals, just because the margins are higher. However, I was in Kansas City a couple weeks ago at the Kansas City Corridor Autumn meeting, and somebody from SIVA indicated that they had licensed some RNA vaccine technology in poultry outside of the US, which was a surprise. That's a very cost-sensitive industry. So your answer is yes, it is certainly more costly than most of the vaccine technology we have today, but there's also lots of pathogens that we haven't been able to solve with conventional technology where this stuff likely will be applied in the future.
Great, thank you. Any final questions? Or we'll move on to our next. Let's give Mike another round of applause. Thank you.